hello. We are very happy to be here, Karsten and I. Karsten Födinger is the protagonist of this talk. He is an artist from Karlsruhe, present with a wonderful work here at the Art Statements. He actually won the prize for his work here. Congratulations again, Karsten. Thanks. My name is Emanuel. I'm an architect based in Basel. I have the honor to be on the stage with Karsten and to try to engage a conversation on his work, or perhaps on the relationship between his work and my discipline at the field of architecture, which is, as we might see, a quite obvious thing to talk about. Just in 2 words for the few who don't or might not know, I'm part of an architectural practice called Gantenbein that is based here in Basel. And Karsten was right that he said, I should just show and introduce myself as well, that you get an understanding who is engaged in this conversation with Karsten Födinger. So I show you a couple of slides without great explanation. It is just an insight in our architectural work. We're currently working, that's one thing that should be mentioned in here, on the extension of the Kunstmuseum Basel here in town. So we start construction next week after the art fair. And over the coming years, you will see this building next to the Kunstmuseum grow. And so that is of a certain impact to the art world. I named just a short series of keywords associated with some images that come from our work, and then Karsten will take over and introduce some of his work, and then we go on and see where we end with this discussion. And I'm sure it will be very exciting. Physical presence, the materiality of an architectural artifact is, of course, in the center of our preoccupations. This is a concrete wall, a cast on-site concrete wall somewhere in the outskirts of Basel. A long time ago, we built this wonderful house in a garden. I don't know where to put this antenna. Another small object that just shows one aspect of our work, that is the dialogue between old and new, the interaction of a pre-existing built environment, in this case, old shed and chapel that is transformed into a cafe place, a bar in a park here in Basel. And obviously, the intervention of the architect has a lot to do with what's already there and how it exists then in a relationship with a given situation. Architecture, and this is, of course, perhaps a bit different from the field of art, is very much anchored in the city, always, in my understanding, anchored in the city. This is a building in Basel that stands or goes together with this other workshop that shows another preoccupation. Architecture is, of course, about people, about society, about politics, but also about form and space. This image talks about the expressionist, or the expression of a line, of a movement in a facade. This image of an office building recently completed talks about the body of a building, the building as an object, the building as an entity. I'm curious to hear what you think, Karsten, about this notion of architectural or artistic artifact. Physical presence might be a description, but also physiognomy. A building always, in our understanding, has an identity, is facing the urban space, and architecture is physiognomic as well. But of course, behind that is the question of identity. Architecture is function, is use, is activity, but it offers places, spaces for such like activities. This is a very pure expression of structure and space for an office building we built in Germany. We kind of approached, in a precarious, close way to art, the radical statement of an object that is just a shelter, a pavilion in China somewhere. So architecture is, of course, in the end, material, space, and light. And with this image of a construction site of a very recent project in Mexico, I hand over to you, Karsten.
Thanks.
Inviting you to show us a couple of your images and of your work.
Thank you. Yeah, when you sent me this this PDF, I had the perfect point to start with my work, since I had this show in Ghent, Belgium, where I put up this reinforcement steel sculpture. This is another view of this piece, and yeah, it's it's inspired by a bridge pier, and we set this up in 2 weeks, binding all this iron by ourselves. This is the last show in the gallery I made in Zurich at the Reber von Stenglin, the gallery that is showing my work here at the booth at the Art Statements. That's the front room and the room in the back. A reinforcement basket for a column, which was filled with concrete without formwork. This is also connected to a bridge pier, a massive concrete piece in the middle of the Kunsthalle St. Gallen, where I showed together with Amalia Pieker, who is also having a statement here. And that's only the formwork of this idea of a massive concrete piece, which was empty in the inside. Another piece I showed at Lister last year. This was a work I made for the Palais de Tokyo. This is in the entrance hall. The Palais de Tokyo was under reconstruction. They extended the Palais de Tokyo into the basement and closed all the rest of the exhibition spaces. And the former auditorium got the exhibition space for 1 year. And I was invited to do the first show in this space. This is the entrance hall right next between the two models, right and left. And this was inside this room. As I said, the former auditorium, that's why it was still black. I left the curtains inside and added this concrete formwork structure. This is another formwork structure I showed at Artissima. A concrete piece that this was an exhibition that took place in a scaffolding in Berlin. It's a Fischgräten-Melkstand at the temporary Kunsthalle Berlin, a show curated by Jon Bock, and I included parts of these scaffolding into my concrete cast, so that this wedge could stand stabilized by the exhibition structure. That was my first show at the Reber von Stenglin, and the first show that took place in the gallery. It was the grand opening of the gallery in February 2010. That's the view from the inside. It looks from here. It looks a little bit like it's tilted. The image. Does it look? Yeah.
Let's assume it's fine.
It's fine. And here's some photos I used to take of supporting structures for architecture that were interesting to me, because yeah, there's this moment where where architecture is not this stable as we are used it, or as we think that it should be. And yeah, that was a quick overview over the work I did in the last year. And now let's talk about catastrophes. When I heard that Reber von Stenglin is going to show, or that they are planning to show me at Art Statements here in Basel, I was really concerned about these two guys showing in this Swiss San Francisco. No, but I'm kidding. But I did, yeah, research on Basel, and I used to live in Freiburg, and I knew that there are many earthquakes going on, and there was one earthquake in 1356 which laid waste to Basel, and yeah, experts are think that this will occur again. They don't know when, but they know that it will happen, and it will be around 800 to 1050 years that such a big tension yeah, accumulates. And that was my starting point for the structure you can see here in Art Statements, where I tried to make this booth earthquake proof. And yeah, should I tell more about it, or just we start talking about it?
Is there one more? Is there one more image?
There's one more image, yeah, but
right.
It's the front view. That's yeah, because I adopted these norms. I did research how can I make this booth earthquake proof, and I started to think and try out, and so this wooden structure was to me very yeah, it was clear that I would do it like this, because all this fair architecture is these wooden panels, just like a sketch of a space, a house of cards in a way. So I wanted to adopt the material, and the whole thing is constructed with.
So, I mean, I have to say, I know a little bit about your work, Karsten, but actually we met earlier this week, and nevertheless your work seems to be very familiar to me because I'm an architect. So, I mean, and perhaps the person who had the idea to bring us together was thinking that it could be interesting that an artist and an architect talk together on a work that seems to be quite close to architecture. One could say this is quite boring to do the obvious thing, but still it is one possible entry to this very interesting and exciting work that we start to understand a little bit. I mean, what is it? Is it architecture? You are, with your beautiful story of this earthquake-proof thing, you are trying to give a reason for it, no? So is there kind of a rational plan behind your work? Do you express some specific architectural qualities of a place, or I mean more in general, do you want to make architecture?
No, I don't want to make architecture. I'm a sculptor, and I think that I think like a sculptor, and I think that I may be a little bit work like an architect in a way, since I can't prepare this in my studio, so I have to do a lot of planning, and my work as a sculptor takes place in a certain space, and this space is always very important to me. Sometimes it gives me the reason for a work, or yeah, they come together in this moment, and I try to melt them to one, even though the sculpture should have its own present, its own. It should work absolutely on its own at the same time. But Yeah, I'm not. I don't think that I'm an architect. I don't think that I do architecture, but I adopt certain parts of architecture to make my work like self-evident, and there's certain things that are really interesting to me about architecture, because architecture and sculpture exist or get created under the same conditions of, for example, gravity or something.
I mean, what I find really very interesting and exciting is that one can read your pieces like an amplifier to an architectural or architectonical quality that is there. You know, the latency of an earthquake or the fragility of a structure like this one, but also in your other work, it is in an amazing kind of balance that the pre-existing spatial condition is like expressed in a very beautiful way through your work, and at the same time your work, as you are saying, stands of course for itself as an object, but the object would be completely meaningless without the architecture, the immediate kind of context around it. That's one possible reading. Do you agree with that, or you think it could be displaced to another place?
Meaningless doesn't sound too good to me.
Yeah, I understand. That was a bit rude. That was a bit rude, though.
No. But I think I know what you mean. I mean, this piece here is really connected to the situation of this fair, of this, as I said, sketchy wooden space where it takes place, and to the whole fair situation and the area, this geological area, but it could also exist in another space, in another town, but it should have this seismic background.
Exactly, that would be the next question. So I could say this is so kind of perfectly anchored in the specific situation of Basel that you take it away and to actually, sorry for the gallery, but to sell it and to put it somewhere else is maybe the wrong thing to do, or how is that?
I mean, if it's maybe an institution or a collector from San Francisco or Tokyo, why not? I mean, this earthquake story, in a way, is for me the reason to build this structure. And I don't think that it really should exist totally apart from this. But this structure gets its own character, its own life, and there's so, I think, and that's also something that I try, that it has a physical presence and that it's more than just this story. That's just, for me, the reason to build this or to think about it in a certain way.
I mean, sure, because I think this is the reason why, or it makes you make this object, but then also it has, of course, a value in itself as an artifact, as an object. And I just wonder if you can briefly explain to us, I mean, actually how you made it, or why does it look like it like this?
Yeah, as I said, I was thinking about making this booth earthquake proof, and I was thinking about how can I do this, and how can this get a sculpture. As I said, I'm a sculptor, so I knew it has to be a sculpture. And I tried out with models in my studio, and sketching, and because I'm not maybe this conceptual developer of a piece, but my work comes out of working on it. And so I tried out, and I thought, okay, how would I do it? I'm not an architect, I'm not an engineer, so I started, okay, we have to do something like this to stabilize the walls, and then we have to have these diagonals to make this in itself stable. And then I had this resulting structure, and I thought, oh yeah, that's I like it, it's good like this. And And I did researches, and there are these certain norms. In German, it's the DIN norm. In Switzerland, it's the SIA. And I found out that from my feeling, my intuition to this structure, I did absolutely right. I had this symmetrical layout, and rectangular and vertical forces would have been taken perfectly in my feeling. And yeah, that's also something that is important to me. That's also why I named this show, in the last show in the gallery, Angsteisen, because of Angsteisen is the common word on construction sites in Germany for.
What's the Angsteisen?
Angsteisen is. Angsteisen is this one. And it's a double layer iron lattice of reinforcement steel like a reinforcing for a truck garage base, which is put on a truck garage base because the gallery is in a former truck garage. So I named this show Angsteisen, which means something like fear iron, which is a common word on German construction sites for when the iron worker puts iron to reinforce a piece, a slab, for example, and it's made without an engineer to save money. He puts an overuse of iron inside just because of his feeling to this concrete piece. So, and in the same way, I had this feeling to this booth and to materialize these forces that are acting in this.
Which is very beautiful. Actually, what maybe also is interesting from the perspective of an architect now. I mean, I was also wondering. I said, it is so strong, this work, and the architectural presence of these objects are so strong. So why am I not able to do such like things in the same radical way? Of course, there's one good reason. I mean, as Vitruvius, for instance, said is that the definition of a successful piece of architecture that is fits or matches mainly three criteria. No? And I mean, this is a bit academic, but I think it's very fundamental and it's close to your work. So there is, I don't remember actually the right order or series, but there is utilitas. So this is use. We might come back to that in a second. So are there useful objects, or what kind of use is there? Because I'm sure there is a certain form of use, of function. Maybe it's a metaphorical use, or a sensational use, or a cultural use, of course. The second is firmitas. No, this means stability and durability, perhaps, for a building or for a structure, which implies a notion of tectonics. And the third is venustas, which is beauty. And to come back now to this, or also if you go to the other one, which I also like very much, is, for instance, that one. This is the irresistible beauty of a construction site. I mean, that's maybe a bit naive, but being an architect. So, and it's maybe not very common to talk about beauty in the context of art, such a piece of art, but there is incredible beauty in it. I mean, also the construction site outside. No, I mean, I don't know. This is just almost the second best piece in the show is this construction site over there, I think. And so therefore, why do we find that so beautiful? What is the beauty of such a formwork, or like this one as well? But also and I mean that one is amazing. Why is this so beautiful?
Why this is so beautiful? Maybe because it's different from what's in everyday life. I mean, normally we try to, our society tries to hide these construction site situations behind walls yeah, just you can't see it that. There's something going on what's not in the common way of everyday life because it's disturbing. And yeah, maybe this is a reason why it's beautiful. I don't know. I mean, for me, the physical presence is very beautiful.
Yeah.
And the physical presence also in this used material, because this material is telling about its former use. And so if this is beautiful to you, that I like that. But
I mean, maybe I'm a bit biased as an architect, but I mean,
if you go back to the Palais de Tokyo,
this one or the other view?
This one was really funny for me because I went there on the last weekend to take photos of the show, and I went inside to take, for example, this photo, and you see there are people inside watching at the structure, and but when I was standing there, I could see a lot of people came here, seeing this slab, reading the text, looking at the slab, opening the door and thinking, oh no, there's construction site going on. So this kind of backstage character, I mean, also that the room was black with curtains, and it was, yeah, like this this construction site situation, and you're not supposed to be there. So
sure.
This is not the artwork. It can't be the artwork because that's yeah, different situation.
I mean, this is also why I think this work is so much speaking to us, and especially also when one is a bit familiar with the world of construction. But looking more carefully, of course, then it is kind of a surreal construction. And but still, I think this is just a short excursus. But what I think is so interesting, or so beautiful about construction sites, I mean, this is a very almost naive notion, is that construction always expresses hope in a way, and expectation, because something is built up. I mean, this is I feel like that, you know, you go there and all the people they're working with their hands, they believe that it's worth to build up something that improves the world in a way, you know. And you're doing this kind of symbols or monuments of this extremely positive and optimistic force somehow also. It's worth to defend this booth against earthquake because, you know, there's always a very, very positive kind of basic energy in building. That's, I mean, I'm also provoking a bit that, but
that's very idealistic.
Yeah, sure. Do you agree with that? Or I mean, maybe you also put in crisis to some extent the construction site, because that's, for instance, doesn't look very stable and strong to me, you know.
No, it's
rather a threat in a way, you know.
Yeah,
dangerous.
It's not stable at all. That's why I had to keep the formwork, and I just removed as much formwork as I was able to remove. I had to talk to an engineer, and yeah, I mean, when I show this fragility, maybe it's also about the stability surrounding it. But to come back to your this kind of yeah, people working on something with a good energy. That's also something that's very interesting to me, because I do most of my pieces as far as I can by myself. For sure, here were some guys helping, but the working on it, the tour de force, maybe is also a very important point about this work, and also this choreography or something of working is also like.
How do you mean choreography of work?
Yeah, because you said like these people on the construction site that work with a good energy, and you can see like here on this construction site the cranes. It's like a choreography, something like this. Yeah. And also this one we did by ourselves. Matthias von Stenglin and me, we did some concrete pouring, and that was yeah. For me, it's important to work on the piece.
I mean, this is kind of. I'd like to relate the notion of stability or instability, like here, to the notion of time somehow, you know, because and process. You do, for instance, like here, you also do very, very stable work, you know, very solid, very solid. And does it last? Do you keep it there, or I mean, this kind of maximum contradiction between this solidity, this massive presence of such a concrete piece, and the ephemeral quality of a, I don't know, temporary exhibition. How does that go together, or how do you relate your work to time, and how does it last, or is it documented, or is it just destroyed, or is it sold and stands somewhere else?
I like to have this contrast between this moment, this very short moment of exhibition, like some month, something like this, with this way of working this out, like concrete, and you have this material. It stands for duration, almost eternity, and I like to have, to create this contrast between these two timelines or time periods. And this one was destroyed after the exhibition. For sure, it couldn't stay there because I would not want allow to hang paintings on this piece. But we destroyed it, and I was also not, when we built it, to me it's important to build it, and I'm not thinking about dismantling. So we were thinking, okay, how could we dismantle this? But also one reason why this piece developed was that all the area around the gallery, it's in the west of Zurich, which is really an area that is totally changed. There were construction sites all over. And that was also one idea to me to get in the same process of, now we work this out. And in the end, it was destroyed by a guy who was also right next to another construction site, a guy with a kind of caterpillar with was Pressluft.
I don't know.
Yeah, compressive air hammer. And he came and smashed this piece in 2 hours. It was in a container, so it was the fastest dismantling of a show ever for me. And so this also proved me that I was right to do this piece there. But yeah, I like to have this. Always like to have this contrast between this periods, and sometimes people tell me, why are you doing this? It's so much work, and but yeah, it's my job.
no, sure, because what I then start to understand is, I find that interesting that your work goes for this maximum presence and solidity, and then it's taken away and it is dismantled. So it is the opposite of a kind of a Kunst am Bau position, you know, where you start to really kind of put something onto a building, and then it becomes part of it, and it lasts as long as the building does. That's apparently is not so much your approach or your attitude. I don't know, because I was wondering how would you react if it has to stay, maybe completely fragile and light, or I don't know.
I mean, this that I know that will be destroyed afterwards makes it very light at the same time for me, and that I mean, I wouldn't have any space to store something like this, and so I keep myself very light. And my studio neighbor, he came to the studio, and we had my tools were back in the studio, and he said to his girlfriend, "Look, these boxes there, that was the material Karsten did set up in Basel and in Zurich, where I did a concrete piece, a big one."
What was the material, and what was in these boxes?
Screwdriver, one shovel, and so I try to keep myself very light, and yeah. So
you mean you build all these things with a kind of a handy toolbox? That's what you have.
Yeah.
You have a
with the support of for example,
The gallerists.
The gallerists and construction site firms, and that's very helpful to me because yeah, I'm in this situation, and I can't bring the caterpillar and
no, sure. Which is also because that makes it also very archaic. And by the way, I mean, this is a kind of funny side note, but I like it. Kind of gives me a new image of the gallerist as the guy who is working, you know, and pouring concrete and everything together with you. I find that really great. I have to say.
That's also very great to me. That's totally fitting to my needs.
No, but yeah, I'm sure. So I mean, because you know, another keyword is the image, of course. I mean, for instance, this one, which I like extremely. Do you take the pictures, or I mean, or how do you document your work? Because in the end, I could say, the image is what remains, and this is even more important. No, it's not more important, of course not. But yeah, it lasts. And since I understood right, because I was first I thought it was done by you, but this you have to. This and that. These are photographs taken by you, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So, and the structure?
The structure has not been built by me. These ones are built by don't know. I find these situations in the streets because there's for some reason the stability of this building endangered. So I see this, and yeah, it perfectly fits to my interests, to my work. So I adopt these by taking this photo. So
and then it is incorporated into your kind of in your artistic work, where you have a series of photographs of your structures, and then all of a sudden those. And this is I find that remarkable. And that gives me the hint that in the end the photograph is like a very important layer of your work, or that's my interpretation.
Yeah,
it's also perhaps a commercial interpretation. I don't know, because you can sell the photograph, or why do you do that?
But for example, this photo is not an artwork of mine. I take the photos myself because several times during my work I relate on other people that said, yeah, we take good photos, don't worry. And in the end, as you know, the work is destroyed mostly in the end. I had nothing, so I decided, okay, I have to do it myself.
Also, that's interesting. But you're saying that's not an artwork, so
this photo is not an artwork.
But the photographs of the as found structures in the city,
these
they are
artworks.
Yeah. Okay.
No. Yeah, because maybe it's because of my connection to this one, and because I built them myself in this gallery space, and these are like almost a conclusion of all what's interesting me. So and I find these, and I can take the picture, and I never pretended that I built it.
Yeah.
At the first time, I was showing these in the Meisterschüler-Katalog. In Germany, we have this additional Meisterschüler year at the academy after the diploma. And in Karlsruhe, we produce a catalog in the end. And I showed these photographs, and I was really curious to see how the people reacted, know my work. And it was really funny because people said, yeah, perfect. I like.
No, but it's exactly what happened to me as well. You know, I mean, when we sat together on Monday, and you showed me the images, and then of course this is a trap. I was looking at your structures, which are beautiful, but always then comes back my architect's view that I say, okay, that's fantastic. It's like the apotheosis of architecture, but there is one big exception. There is no immediate functional use to it. It is free, somehow a liberated piece of architecture because it's to some point kind of useless or not that much integrated in reality of life, and there is a surreal aspect to it. I mean, for sure, you know, this kind of concrete ceiling on top of the booth in Torino. So, and then I was coming to these images and I said, wow. And then you start to think yourself as an architect, it's true, it's an artwork, so somehow it's not needed. So, and then I said to myself, it's true. I mean, this is a complete nonsense here because I mean, it wouldn't do anything because it's just one slim line, you know, etc. So I give my own artistic explanation of this work, because I read it as a piece of art, and I was completely kind of trapped, and it's embarrassing to notice that, because then you told me afterwards it's a real situation done Angsteisen perhaps by some workers, and this makes it, of course, even more multi-layered, your discovery as an artist, and that's exactly what is also a way for me as an architect. How do we work? What is our discoveries in the everyday, and how does that lead to my work? So that's another perhaps topic. Where comes your inspiration from? Where you discover your kind of raw material? Because you have, in a way, a clear strategy and a kind of an overall topic. But how do you evolve that? I mean, in a bold kind of simple question, what's next? You know, do you go on with this structure, or how do you take this topic further of challenging the architectural or architectonical by going beyond just architecture?
I don't know what's next. If I knew it, I wouldn't have no need to do it. So, as I said, I find out while working, and I do this in my studio. I have a studio, and because I just say I have a studio because maybe it's not self-evident that I have a studio, because I work more, all this stuff I showed was created on location, and yeah, but I think that I'm interested in this process of architecture, in this way that a building struggles the forces of gravity, and it remains in a kind of standstill. Don't know if you can say it like this, and then it's like one moment of stillness in this process, and that's what's interesting to me. All these things that can be also very easily handled in architecture, but maybe doesn't is an issue to you, because you have maybe your creative process is a total different one, because you're working, and then there are engineers. That's my idea. Are engineers that and you look how can we get to what we invented, in a way. And to me, it's totally different one. I come more from working with the material, and working with the material means also working with these spaces where I'm working in. And so I'm totally open to what comes next.
No, sure.
But
we should perhaps
what comes next is also because we got a sign that we have to stop now.
No, is there time for questions, or are you okay? Two questions. So,
is there any question at all?
I mean, anyone afraid of earthquake or so? There. Yeah.
There's a question.
Did I understand you correctly that your construction is according to SIA norms for sturdiness, or whatever norms?
DIN norms, actually.
Oh, that's the German equivalent?
That's the German one, yeah.
So for earthquake proofness, or for what?
For earthquake proofness. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That's, I think so. I don't know if it does. I didn't talk to an engineer, but that's what I was trying to fit.
Some more question? It is quite satisfying that one can clarify everything in such a short time, but it's...
yeah, thank you for your questions.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thanks for your answers and for your work. And
you're welcome.
It's very inspiring for us, for all of us, I assume, and for me personally as an architect. Of course, I'm a bit worried to see that artists take over the field of architecture by just getting rid of some really nasty constraints and make it even more radical than we might you do it? I think you are like an example that shows that even as an architect, being exposed to all sorts of interaction and regulations, etc., we should go for this kind of clarity and strong presence of architectural features that you are expressing through your very, very subtle and very interesting work. And therefore, it was very enriching for me, and I hope for you as well. Thank you very much. Okay.